The whispers cut through the humid air of Fort Nolan's training field, sharp and cruel. "She's slower than my grandma," a young recruit sneered, watching a lone figure stumble behind the pack, her breaths heavy, her boots scuffing the dirt. Mattie Shaw, 31, was the oldest recruit in the advanced program, her face lined with quiet determination, but shadowed by something unreadable. Her worn uniform hung loosely, hiding a faded tattoo, an anchor laced with lightning bolts that hinted at a past no one knew. The younger soldiers mocked her slowness, her silence, her average skills, dismissing her as a quota filler who didn't belong. But when her sleeve slipped during a grueling crawl, revealing that mark, the general's eyes locked on her, his face paling as if he'd seen a ghost. Who was this woman, running drills like she was chasing a memory she couldn't name? What had she lost that brought her back to this brutal beginning? From which city are you watching this story unfold today? If you believe some scars hold secrets that change everything, keep reading to discover the truth about Mattie Shaw, a soldier whose body remembered what her mind had forgotten. Mattie Shaw, a 31-year-old recruit at Fort Nolan, is mocked for her age and slowness, her past a mystery even to herself. A faded tattoo, an anchor with lightning bolts, hints at a forgotten life. During a chaotic training accident, her instincts kick in, saving a drill instructor with expert precision. General Marcus Elroy recognizes her as Madison Shore, presumed dead after Operation Burning Sky. As memories flood back, Mattie learns she was a hero of Unit 47 Omega. Her past unravels, revealing a warrior's legacy. Will her rediscovered identity reshape her future or haunt her forever? If Mattie's journey from forgotten hero to mentor inspires you, join our community. Subscribe to support stories of resilience and silent strength. Share your city in the comments and hit that like button to honor the warriors who never give up. Keep watching for more tales of courage. Mattie Shaw, at 31, stood out as the oldest recruit trudging through the grueling advanced training program at Fort Nolan. Her presence drew sidelong glances and barely concealed smirks from the younger recruits, who saw her as an anomaly, a woman out of place, too slow, too quiet, too ordinary to belong among them. Her past was a cipher, a patchwork of half-truths and missing years. Once a military technician, she had vanished from official records for a stretch of time, only to resurface as a recruit in this punishing program. Her file was sparse, suspiciously so, offering no clues about the woman who kept to herself, bunked in the bottom corner of the barracks, and polished her scuffed boots with a meticulous care that seemed almost ritualistic. Under the worn fabric of her long sleeves hid a faded tattoo, an anchor entwined with lightning bolts, the unofficial emblem of a rapid response sea and air unit. It was a mark that carried weight, though Mattie couldn't grasp why. Each night, alone on her bunk, she traced the lines of that tattoo, her fingers lingering over the ink as if it could speak. The tattoo was her only tether to a past she could feel but not see, a past that stirred in her bones but refused to surface. The training grounds were a crucible of sweat and scorn. Mattie lagged behind in sprints, her breaths coming in ragged gasps as younger recruits breezed past her. During a crawling drill under barbed wire, her shirt snagged, exposing the tattoo for a fleeting moment. The jeers from her peers fell silent, not because they noticed the ink, but because General Marcus Elroy, a towering figure with a reputation for missing nothing, stood observing from the edge of the field. His eyes locked on Mattie, not with pity or disdain, but with a flicker of recognition that made his jaw tighten. To him, she wasn't a struggling recruit. She was a ghost, a shadow of someone he'd known long ago. He didn't see weakness in her faltering steps. He saw a story etched in ink, a story she herself couldn't read. Mattie's isolation was palpable. The younger recruits, like Bradley, a sharp-tongued know-it-all, didn't hesitate to mock her. "She runs slower than my grandma," he'd sneered during a drill, his voice carrying across the field. Who let her pass the physical? The words stung, but Mattie didn't flinch outwardly. She absorbed the cruelty, her face a mask of quiet endurance. Bradley's taunts were echoed by others, who called her a paper soldier, a quota filler, someone who didn't belong in the grit and grind of Fort Nolan. Yet they couldn't see what General Elroy did, glimpses of a soldier buried beneath her unremarkable exterior. The way her eyes instinctively scanned for exit routes during drills. The mechanical precision in her hands as she maintained her weapon, even when her mind fumbled the steps. The way she flinched at sudden noises, a crack of a branch, a shout, only to recover so swiftly it went unnoticed by most. Inside Mattie, a war raged between what she was and what she had been. Her body remembered things her mind couldn't touch. The scent of salt water laced with diesel fuel haunted her dreams, conjuring images of a life she couldn't piece together. The rhythmic thrum of helicopter rotors slicing through ocean winds echoed in her ears, a sound so vivid it felt like it belonged to her. Her hands moved through equipment checks with a practiced ease she couldn't explain, as if guided by a ghost within her. But when she reached for those memories, they dissolved like mist, leaving her grasping at shadows. She hadn't come to Fort Nolan to become a soldier. She was already something, or had been. She was here to break herself open, to let the exhaustion, the gunfire, the relentless discipline shatter the wall that locked her past away. The obstacle course was her crucible. During a rope climb, her grip faltered and she crashed into the dirt, the impact jarring her bones. Bradley's laughter rang out, sharp and cruel. "She's dead weight. Why is she even here?" he called, his voice dripping with disdain. Mattie pushed herself up, dirt clinging to her sweat-soaked skin, and said nothing. She didn't argue, didn't defend herself. But across the field, General Elroy's gaze lingered on her, his expression unreadable. To the other recruits, Mattie was the weak link, the one who couldn't keep up, the one who didn't belong. They didn't see the soldier trapped inside her, the one whose instincts still flared in fleeting unconscious moments. They didn't know about the nights she sat alone, staring at the tattoo that felt like both a promise and a curse. The worst part wasn't the mockery or the physical strain. It was the maddening sense that a soldier lived inside her, one who knew exactly what to do, locked behind a barrier of forgotten years. Her body carried muscle memory that felt both intimate and alien, hands that knew the weight of a rifle, feet that adjusted to uneven terrain without thought, eyes that tracked threats before her mind could name them. She had come to Fort Nolan not for glory, but for answers. Each morning she laced up her worn boots, bracing for another day of humiliation, driven by a bone-deep need to uncover who she had been. The tattoo was her only clue, a silent testament to a life she couldn't remember, but could feel in every fiber of her being. It was proof that she had once been someone else, someone who mattered, someone who had earned a mark that carried a weight she could sense but not understand. That tattoo would soon unravel everything. During a timed weapons disassembly drill, Mattie's hands moved with a speed and precision that silenced the room. Her fingers danced over the components, stripping and reassembling the rifle as if she'd done it 1,000 times. The recruits around her exchanged glances, their usual taunts caught in their throats. Even Bradley, for once, had nothing to say. General Elroy watched from the sidelines, his eyes narrowing as if a puzzle piece had clicked into place. For Mattie, the moment was a crack in the wall, a fleeting glimpse of the soldier she had been, and the truth that Fort Nolan's trials were about to unearth. Madison Shore Shaw, a 31-year-old recruit with a past cloaked in shadow, moved through the training grounds with a quiet intensity that set her apart. Her faded tattoo, Dao, an anchor laced with lightning bolts, hinted at a history she couldn't recall, a mystery that lingered in the empty spaces of her mind. During a timed rifle disassembly drill, she trailed behind her peers, the stopwatch's sharp ticks underscoring her deliberate pace. Each component of the weapon was handled with meticulous care, her fingers tracing familiar paths she didn't consciously recognize. A drill instructor, his tone thick with scorn, muttered to a colleague, "This is a farce." Even raw cadets could outstrip her. Mattie absorbed the words without reaction, her focus unwavering as she completed the task with a precision others dismissed as slowness. In the mess hall that evening, the ridicule grew bolder. Young recruits, emboldened by their shared disdain, lobbed insults across the room. "Paper soldier!" one jeered, his voice cutting through the clatter of trays. "Probably just here to fill a quota," another added, smirking. No way she earned her place. Must have had a connection. The words burrowed into Mattie, each one a sharp reminder of the void where her memories should have been. She cleared her tray, wiped down the tables with mechanical efficiency, and slipped away to her bunk. Alone in the darkness, the recruit's taunts reverberated, amplifying the unsettling absence of her past. That night, a live-fire exercise descended into chaos. Misfired rounds shattered the overhead lights, plunging the training ground into blackness. Sparks cascaded like fiery rain, and panic gripped the recruits. Shouts and stumbles filled the air as they tripped over the scattered gear. A drill instructor fell, his cry sharp as he struck jagged metal debris. While others hesitated, Mattie sprang into action. Her hands, unsteady moments before, now moved with an eerie precision, as if guided by a force beyond her conscious control. In the dark, she tore her sleeve to create a makeshift tourniquet, applying pressure to the instructor's wounds with a skill that felt instinctive yet unfamiliar. Her movements were automatic, a relic of a life she couldn't access. Bradley, a self-assured recruit who leaned heavily on his memorized manuals, rushed over, barking corrections. "You're messing it up. The book says elevate the legs first," he shouted, his voice brimming with confidence. Mattie didn't spare him a glance. From somewhere deep within, a single, raw sentence growled out, "Books don't fight in Fallujah." The words, heavy with an unplaceable weight, startled even her. They hung in the air, a fragment of a life she didn't know she'd lived. When the emergency lights flickered on, medics arrived, their eyes widening at the precision of her field treatment. The instructor, now stable, would later attribute his survival to her quick thinking. A senior medic, catching his breath, fixed her with a probing look. "Where'd you learn that kind of triage?" Mattie stared at her blood-streaked hands, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know." The next morning, a routine inspection brought senior officers to the training grounds. Mattie was called forward to demonstrate the new rifle breakdown procedure before the entire unit. Standing under the scrutiny of her peers, she began, her hands moving with a growing confidence. As she worked, her sleeve shifted, revealing the faded tattoo on her arm. The anchor, entwined with lightning bolts, caught the sunlight, drawing the eye of General Marcus Elroy. Mid-sentence, he fell silent, his gaze locked on the tattoo before shifting to Mattie's face. Her words from the night before, relayed by Bradley, "Books don't fight in Fallujah," echoed in his mind. That phrase had been the unspoken mantra of Unit 47 Omega, a team etched into his memory. Elroy stepped closer, his expression a mix of recognition and disbelief as he studied the tattoo and the distant confusion in Mattie's eyes. His face drained of color as fragments of the past clicked into place. Turning to the base commander, his voice shook. "Pull her medical records. Look for traumatic brain injury or memory loss linked to Operation Burning Sky Mile." The commander's brow creased. "Sir, that operation's above my clearance." Elroy's voice dropped, almost to himself. "Mine too, but I was there." A hush fell over the training ground, the weight of his words rippling through the ranks. The recruits who had mocked Mattie now stood silent, caught in the gravity of a moment they couldn't fathom. Mattie continued her demonstration, unaware of the storm gathering around her. Her movements grew fluid, the rifle's weight stirring something deep within her, as if each click of metal was unlocking a piece of her buried past. Elroy's voice broke the silence, a murmur laced with impossibility. "It can't be. The entire unit was listed as K." The words, "killed in action," hung heavy, a specter of truth that Mattie didn't yet understand but could no longer outrun. The sharp crack of gunfire echoed across the training field, but for Meline Mattie Shaw, the sound hit like a fist to the chest. Her hands froze on the rifle she was assembling, fingers trembling not from the anxiety of a new recruit, but from a flood of memories clawing their way to the surface. Vivid flashes assaulted her mind, deafening explosions, the piercing screams of her teammates, the acrid stench of burning fuel choking the air. Her breath hitched, her vision blurring as the past roared back with unrelenting force. "Ma'am, you okay?" The drill instructor's voice cut through the haze, steady but tinged with concern. Mattie lifted her gaze, locking eyes with General Marcus Elroy for the first time. In his weathered face, she saw something that stopped her cold. Recognition, laced with a flicker of fear and, inexplicably, a glimmer of hope. Her voice, when it came, was steadier than it had any right to be after months of uncertainty. "I think," she said, each word deliberate, "I'm starting to remember." Her body had always known what her mind had buried. It was in the way her hands moved with surgical precision during medical drills, instinctively applying pressure to a wound or tying a tourniquet before she could even think about the steps. It was in the hyper-alert scan of her surroundings, her eyes catching tactical details, a misplaced crate, an unsecured perimeter, that no rookie should notice. It was in the commands that spilled from her lips during a crisis, words she didn't know she knew, barked with the authority of someone who had led in the face of chaos. Her mind had locked away the truth, but her muscles, her instincts, her very bones carried the legacy of a warrior. The other recruits, who had once dismissed her as frail or incompetent, now stood in stunned silence, sensing they were witnessing something far beyond their understanding. Mattie wasn't just another trainee struggling to keep up. She was something else entirely, someone their superiors regarded with a mix of reverence and dread. Her body had never forgotten who she was, and now, at last, her mind was beginning to catch up. General Marcus Elroy was one of the few still alive who knew the full story of Unit 47 Omega. The team had been a ghost in the military's records, a rapid response unit forged in absolute secrecy to tackle crises too volatile for standard forces and too urgent for diplomats to untangle. Their symbol, a jagged anchor pierced by a lightning bolt, was never officially recorded. Only 12 people had ever borne the mark, a tattoo etched into their skin as a badge of their impossible missions. According to every classified file, all 12 had perished 3 years ago in the catastrophe of Operation Burning Sky. Yet here stood Meline Shaw, very much alive, her faded tattoo a silent contradiction to the official narrative. "Clear the training ground," Elroy ordered, his voice low but carrying the weight of command. "Everyone out except the subject," the Madison. The recruits shuffled out, their confusion buzzing like static in the air. Bradley, the smug know-it-all who had once corrected Mattie's medical technique with a smirk, lingered by the door, craning his neck to catch any snippet of what was unfolding. The others whispered among themselves, their earlier mockery of Mattie replaced by uneasy curiosity. Davis, a scrawny recruit who had been inspired by Mattie's quiet resilience, cast a glance back at her, his expression a mix of awe and worry. When the field was empty, Elroy approached Mattie with the caution of a man stepping toward a cornered animal. His eyes softened, but his posture remained rigid, as if bracing for whatever might come next. "Staff Sergeant Madison Shore," he said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of a name unspoken for 3 years. "Call sign, Anchor." The name struck Mattie like a bolt of lightning, sending jagged fragments of memory surging through her. She saw herself in a helicopter, the roar of its blades drowning out the world as it skimmed over ink-black water. She felt the weight of specialized diving gear pressing against her shoulders, the faces of 11 teammates, her family, etched in her mind. Sarah Chen, the explosives expert with a laugh that could defuse any tension. Marcus Rodriguez, the communications specialist who could coax a signal from the most hopeless situations. Jake Williams, the sniper whose steady hands never faltered. Lisa Thompson, the medic whose compassion held them all together. They flickered through her mind, vivid and alive, then gone. "I know that name," Mattie whispered, her hand drifting to the faded tattoo on her arm, the anchor and lightning bolt that had never fully washed away. "But it feels like someone else's life." "It was your life," Elroy said, his tone gentle but unyielding. "You were the best combat diver in the Pacific Fleet, Unit 47 Omega's maritime specialist. You could slip into any coastal stronghold, plant explosives underwater, while holding your breath for 8 minutes, and guide your team through waves that would snap the spines of most Navy SEALs." More memories crashed over her, relentless as a storm, the cold bite of a breathing apparatus against her face, the sting of salt water flooding her lungs during a desperate ascent, the heart-pounding precision of planting charges on a ship's hull while enemy searchlights swept the surface above. Her body remembered it all, the rhythm of her strokes through churning water, the weight of the detonators in her hands, the trust in her team's voices crackling through her earpiece. "Operation Burning Sky," she said, the words rising from some buried corner of her soul. "We were extracting a defector from a research facility, but something went wrong." Elroy's face darkened, his nod heavy with the weight of shared grief. "The intelligence was bad. Your unit walked into a trap. The facility was wired to blow. When the extraction chopper arrived, the whole complex went up in flames. Mattie's legs buckled, and she sank onto a nearby bench, her breath ragged. The memories were coming faster now, each one sharper and more agonizing than the last. The deafening roar of the explosion, the heat searing her skin, the screams of her teammates, swallowed by the fire. She pressed her hands to her face as if she could hold back the tide of pain threatening to drown her. But her body, her instincts, her very bones remembered. And now, so did she. Meline Shaw, known to the world as Mattie, sat in the dim glow of General Marcus Elroy's office, her hands trembling as she clutched the edges of her chair. At 31, she was older than most recruits, her body lean from years of restless movement, her eyes haunted by shadows she couldn't name. A faded tattoo, an anchor pierced by a bolt of lightning, marked her forearm, a cryptic relic of a past she couldn't fully grasp. Her voice, when she spoke, cracked like thin ice. "I remember the explosion," she said, each word heavy with a grief she didn't fully understand. "I was thrown into the water, tumbling through the dark, the cold swallowing me. They told me later, search and rescue, they found debris, a few personal items scattered across the waves, but no bodies. Everyone assumed my unit was gone, dead. They said I was dead too." She stared at her hands, fingers tracing the faint lines of the tattoo as if it could unlock the truth. "But I survived," she whispered, almost to herself. "I don't know how, but I did." General Elroy, a man whose weathered face carried the weight of decades in command, leaned forward. His eyes, sharp and knowing, lingered on the tattoo before meeting hers. Without a word, he slid a tablet across the desk, its screen glowing with classified medical reports. "3 days after the blast," he said, his voice steady but not unkind, "fishermen found you floating 20 miles offshore. Unconscious. Severe head trauma, broken ribs, hypothermia so bad the Navy doctor called it a miracle you were still breathing." Mattie's eyes scanned the reports, her breath catching as fragments of her lost life flickered into focus. The words on the screen were clinical, detached, dates, injuries, prognoses, but they painted a vivid picture of a woman pulled from the brink of death. "The brain injury," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's why I can't remember. Traumatic amnesia." Elroy nodded, his expression softening. "The doctor warned us your memories might never come back. You were medically discharged, given a new identity, Meline Shaw, for your own protection. The operation was too sensitive, too classified. Even a survivor could have been a liability." Mattie's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes glistening. "So Madison Shaw died with her unit," she said, the words tasting bitter. "And Meline Shaw was born." Elroy leaned back, his chair creaking under his weight. "You chose to disappear, Mattie. You told me yourself back then that you couldn't bear being the only one left. The guilt was tearing you apart, even though you couldn't remember what you were guilty for." Her gaze lifted, meeting his, tears brimming but refusing to fall. "Then why am I here?" she asked, her voice raw with desperation. "Why did I come back to military training, of all things?" Elroy's eyes held a flicker of something, pride perhaps, or hope. "The doctor said familiar environments might trigger what's buried in your mind. Deep down, some part of you knew this place, this life, was the key to finding yourself again." As they spoke, pieces of Mattie's fractured past began to surface, like shards of glass catching the light. For 3 years, her subconscious had been steering her, guiding her choices in ways she hadn't understood. She drifted to coastal towns, always near the water, as if the ocean itself called to her. She'd taken jobs that demanded precision and quick thinking, construction, emergency response, anything that kept her body sharp and her mind alert. Her muscles, it seemed, had been preparing for a truth her mind had locked away. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been clawing at her heart. "The others in my unit," she said, her voice so soft it barely carried. "Tell me about them." Elroy's face tightened, a shadow passing over his features. He tapped the tablet, pulling up a gallery of faces, 11 young, determined soldiers, each bearing the same anchor and lightning tattoo. "Lieutenant Sarah Chen," he began, his voice measured. "Explosives expert. could disarm anything with a fuse, but she'd scream at the sight of a spider. Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, communications, always humming some old tune while he cleaned his radio gear. Corporal Jake Williams, sniper, carried a photo of his newborn daughter everywhere he went. Petty Officer Lisa Thompson, medic, tough as nails, but she'd tear up patching someone's wounds. As he spoke their names, Mattie's memories sharpened, each one a knife twisting in her chest. She could hear Marcus's low, absent-minded humming, the way Sarah's laugh would cut through the tension of a mission. She saw Jake, his calloused fingers brushing over the creased photo of his daughter, his eyes softening with a love he rarely spoke aloud. Lisa's steady hands, her quiet reassurances as she bandaged a wound. They were real again, alive in her mind, and the weight of their absence crushed her. "They died because of me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "No," Elroy said sharply, his tone cutting through her spiraling guilt. "They died because someone betrayed the mission." Intelligence confirmed it later. The facility commander was feeding information to hostile forces. "Your unit walked into a trap, a kill zone designed for them." Mattie's hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. "But I was the team leader. I should have seen it. I should have gotten them out." Elroy's gaze didn't waver. "Madison, you saved lives that day. Your quick thinking during the extraction stopped a catastrophe. That research facility was developing weapons that could have killed thousands. Your unit's sacrifice, it wasn't for nothing." Mattie fell silent, the weight of his words settling over her like a heavy fog. "She was a hero," he said, "but she didn't feel like one. She was a leader who'd lost her team, a survivor who'd spent 3 years running from a destiny she couldn't recall. The guilt, the pride, the grief, they tangled inside her, impossible to unravel." "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steadier but still laced with uncertainty. Elroy studied her, his expression thoughtful. "That's your call, Mattie. Madison Shore is gone, officially dead, and for security reasons, she needs to stay that way. But Meline Shore, she can keep training, serve again, in whatever role she chooses." Mattie's thoughts drifted to the other recruits. Bradley, with his smug grin and sharp tongue, who'd mocked her early on but later apologized, his face flushed with shame. Davis, the nervous kid who looked at her with wide-eyed admiration, as if she held the answers he was searching for. "The others," she said, "they don't know any of this." "No," Elroy confirmed, "and for operational security, they can't. Not yet." Mattie nodded, her jaw tight. She was Meline Shore now, a woman reborn from the ashes of a life she was only beginning to understand. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of purpose. Her team was gone, but their memory lived in her, in the tattoo on her arm, in the fragments of her past, in the choices she would make next. Meline Mattie Shore, known to some as Madison Shore, stood slowly, the weight of her reclaimed identity settling over her like a long-lost coat of armor, familiar yet heavy with the ghosts of her past. At 31, she had spent 3 years adrift, her memories fragmented, her faded tattoo a cryptic reminder of a life she couldn't fully grasp. Now, as the truth of who she was, Madison Shore, the sole survivor of Unit 47 Omega, came flooding back, she felt a quiet strength take root. For the first time in years, she was whole, no longer fleeing the shadow of her former self, but ready to embrace it. The story of Mattie's past spread through Fort Nolan like a spark catching dry grass, though the classified details remained locked away, known only to a select few. What reached the recruits was enough to shift their perception entirely. The woman they had dismissed, mocked for her hesitancy and quiet demeanor, was no ordinary recruit. She was a decorated special operations veteran, a warrior who had lost her memory and her connection to a life of service. The revelation hit like a shockwave, reshaping the atmosphere of the training grounds. Bradley, the brash, know-it-all recruit who had once lectured Mattie on medical procedures during a chaotic training mishap, was the first to approach her that evening. Gone was his usual swagger, replaced by a rare humility that seemed to weigh on him as much as his gear. Standing stiffly at attention by her bunk, he spoke softly, his voice stripped of its usual edge. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. What I said during the accident, and everything before that, was out of line. I had no idea who you were." Mattie met his gaze, her eyes no longer clouded with the distant confusion that had haunted her for months. A faint, bittersweet smile curved her lips. "I didn't know either," she said gently. "Maybe we can both take something from this." Her words carried no judgment, only an invitation to move forward. The change in the barracks was palpable. Recruits who had once whispered cruel jibes behind her back now sought her out, their eyes wide with newfound respect. During weapons drills, they studied her movements with fresh awareness, recognizing the deliberate precision they had once mistaken for slowness. Mattie didn't revel in their attention or boast about her skills. Instead, she moved quietly among the struggling trainees, offering guidance with a steady hand. She corrected their stances, adjusted their grips, and explained techniques with a calm authority born not of rank but of hard-earned experience. Her presence was a quiet force, steadying those around her. One crisp morning, a worn notebook was found abandoned on a table in the training room. Its pages were filled with Mattie's handwriting, a treasure trove of survival techniques, medical protocols, and tactical insights she had been piecing together as her memories resurfaced. The margins brimmed with meticulous sketches, equipment layouts, emergency procedures, and weapon configurations. The drill instructor who discovered it sat in awed silence, flipping through page after page of knowledge that no textbook could teach. "This," he murmured to a colleague, "this is the real thing. Combat experience distilled into something we can actually teach." The notebook became a quiet legend, a testament to Mattie's unspoken expertise. Word of her past reached the base commander, who ordered a discreet memorial for Operation Burning Sky, the mission that had claimed her unit. In a small private ceremony, a wooden plaque was hung in the base's tradition room, engraved with 12 names, heroes whose sacrifices were known only to those who understood their weight. Mattie stood before it afterward, her fingers brushing over the carved letters. For 3 years, she had carried the memory of her teammates alone, their faces flickering in the haze of her broken mind. Now, as she traced their names, Sarah Chen, Marcus Rodriguez, Jake Williams, Lisa Thompson, she felt the burden lighten, if only slightly. "Sarah," she whispered, picturing the explosives expert who had shrieked at the sight of spiders, but faced danger with unshakable courage. Marcus, Jake, Lisa. Each name was a vow, a quiet promise to honor what they had died for. Bradley appeared beside her, silent, holding a simple chocolate bar, a small, earnest gesture of respect. He placed it gently by the memorial and stepped back, saying nothing. Others followed his lead, their tributes understated but heartfelt. A steaming cup of coffee appeared at Mattie's place during meals. Her boots, scuffed from training, gleamed one morning, polished by unseen hands. These small acts spoke louder than words, weaving a quiet thread of camaraderie through the barracks. Mattie stayed in the training program, but her role had transformed. No longer the uncertain recruit fighting to prove herself, she became a mentor, guiding others toward their own strength. Her quiet confidence inspired those around her, particularly Davis, a nervous new recruit who had struggled under the weight of his own doubts. When fresh faces arrived and judged her by her unassuming appearance, the veteran trainees were quick to set them straight. "Don't underestimate her," they'd say, their voices carrying the weight of hard-learned respect. Mattie, for her part, simply kept moving forward, her past no longer a shadow to outrun, but a foundation to build upon. Meline Mattie Shaw, known to some as Madison Shore, stood at the heart of Fort Nolan's training grounds, a 31-year-old recruit whose weathered features and guarded eyes hinted at a past she'd only recently pieced back together. The faded tattoo on her arm, an anchor entwined with a jagged lightning bolt, once a buried secret, now gleamed under the sun, a testament to battles fought and a life reclaimed. 6 months had passed since her memories flooded back, jagged fragments of a life she'd thought lost forever. With them came a renewed sense of purpose, not in chasing glory, but in guiding others to find their own strength. Fort Nolan, once a modest outpost, had transformed into a crucible of excellence, its reputation spreading through hushed military circles. The recruits emerging from its gates weren't just skilled, they carried a rare blend of technical precision and hard-earned wisdom, forged under Mattie's steady gaze. She moved through the training exercises with the same grit she'd always had, but now her sleeves stayed rolled up, the tattoo no longer concealed. It wasn't a mark of shame and a relic of a forgotten life. It was a badge of honor earned through fire and loss. Mattie had chosen to remain an enlisted soldier, shunning the weight of officers' bars. She led not by barking orders, but by example, her actions speaking louder than any rank could. A military journalist once tried to unravel her story, drawn to the enigma of a veteran whose memories had returned like ghosts from a forgotten war. But General Marcus Elroy, a grizzled officer who'd recognized Mattie's tattoo and the weight of her past, shut the inquiry down with quiet resolve. Some stories, he said, his voice firm yet reverent, are too sacred to be splashed across headlines. Some service is meant to endure, not to be consumed. During a grueling week of training, when the recruits were pushed to their limits, a young soldier named Davis found himself unraveling. The obstacle course had beaten him down, each failure chipping away at his confidence until he sat alone on a weathered bench, staring at his calloused hands as if they'd betrayed him. Mattie spotted him, his slumped shoulders a mirror of her own doubts from years past. She approached quietly, settling beside him, her presence steady but unintrusive. "I used to think strength was about never showing weakness," Davis muttered, his voice thick with frustration. "But watching you these past months, it's something else entirely." Mattie tilted her head, her eyes soft but searching. "What's that?" she asked. Davis hesitated, then met her gaze. "Real strength is carrying burdens nobody else can see. It's standing up again when you don't even know why you fell. It's teaching others while you're still figuring yourself out." His words hung in the air, raw and honest, and Mattie felt a pang of recognition. She thought of her own journey, waking up in a haze of amnesia, piecing together the wreckage of a life she'd lived as Madison Shore, a name that carried the weight of a team lost to an explosion. Her teammates, Sarah Chen, the fearless explosives expert; Marcus Rodriguez, the quick-witted comms specialist; Jake Williams, the sharp-eyed sniper; Lisa Thompson, the medic whose compassion had saved more than just bodies, had taught her that strength wasn't about having all the answers. It was about moving forward when the questions threatened to bury you. She nodded, her thoughts drifting to those faces, now just memories, but no less vivid. "The strongest people I knew," she said quietly, "were the ones who admitted they didn't know everything. My team, they showed me that." Davis glanced at the tattoo on her arm, its faded lines telling a story he could only imagine. "Do you think they'd be proud of you now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mattie's lips curved into a smile, the first truly peaceful one she'd worn in years, as if a weight had finally lifted. "I think they'd be proud that their sacrifice keeps saving lives, just in a different way." Her words were steady, grounded in a truth she'd fought to reclaim. Honor, she knew, wasn't always found in medals pinned to a chest or ribbons displayed on dress blues. Sometimes it lived in quieter moments, in the spark of confidence in a recruit's eyes, in the wisdom passed from scarred hands to those still steady, in the instant a struggling soldier realized that failure wasn't falling, but staying down. Meline Shaw had lost her memory, but in its place she'd found her purpose. Madison Shore had perished in a blast, but her legacy endured in every recruit Mattie shaped, each one pushed to be better than they'd ever dreamed. True strength didn't demand attention or clamor for recognition. It showed up, day after day, in the steady hands of those who'd learned that the greatest victories often followed the hardest defeats. Some tattoos told stories of where you'd been, others became promises of where you were headed. Mattie's was both, a reminder of a past survived and a vow to keep guiding others forward, one quiet lesson at a time.